Yo, what is up? What is going on? Good evening, good night, how are you? All of that nice stuff. Welcome back. It has been a long time since I've uploaded a video with my voice in it, but I felt compelled to, turn this up a little. We are currently in an arc for probably my favorite manga of all time, or second favorite, Hajime no Ippo. We are on chapter 1475. For those of you that don't know the story, it is a boxing manga, a lot of characters, really long history with all of them. I'm gonna assume most of the people that check out this video do know the story, but if I get a little traction here, I might go backward. Otherwise, I think I might just start reviewing the chapters as they come out. So I'm just gonna jump right in here. We are in, like I said, chapter 1475, and we are in the last rounds of Mashiba versus Marcus Rosario. This is one of the greatest fights that this manga has seen, thematically, choreography, basically every aspect of it has been Morikawa at his absolute best. And there's an additional weight that comes with the story, which we'll see as we go through this chapter, because it's so long. I'll tell a little story as we get into it, but let's jump into the chapter here. So we start, things are looking a little grim for both fighters. Rosario took some pretty big hits last round. Mashiba got up from a pretty nasty counter, and artwork's looking pretty good. We jump right in here. Quick shout out to the translators and Morikawa himself. You guys do great work. And we see Mashiba starts to pull back his right here, right? He's very purposefully showing this to Rosario. And one thing I love, you see it here and you see it here, and then again down here. Rosario has those spiral eyes that Morikawa has been using to show like incredible focus. He's used it with Ippo a few times now. And he's using it again here. Look at this. He's like, this guy saw it. The moment that right fist twitched, he knew something's coming. So you see him, he says to himself, a right body blow, right? And Rosario he's a little bit of a dickhead, of course, but more than that, he's a fucking hell of a fighter. And his instincts are right here. He knows he's been skewered in the gut so many times going into this fight, or throughout this fight, right? So right now, I absolutely cannot take that. He does a low block. He thinks he knows what Mashiba's going towards. And then we get this panel, right? I love this. He looks almost supernatural as Morikawa draws it. He lifts his arm, his right arm, from that, you know, kind of down low right straight position up to the chopping right. And everyone who's ever read a Mashiba fight knows what's coming here. Ippo is like, holy shit, dude, it's time. You're right. I didn't realize you hadn't used that. And so we get this panel of his arm just coming from above, right? They call it the heavens in a moment, and I think it fits. And Rosario, with the cross on his forehead, he sees that he fucked up, right? He sees that he messed up, but what can he do? He's too slow. He's out of gas. He's been getting whipped for round after round here. And then we get this, right? Camera pans out, goes right behind Rosario's new and improved hair. And Mashiba just looks like a demon, dude, coming in. I love the ceiling, the way that it looks here, how dark it is. And that fist it's like it's coming down in, you know, Judgment Day, right? That's the name of the arc. And then we get one of Morikawa's best panels in a long time. This page is just incredible, right? You see this explosion, this kaboom, and pans over. And the first thing that I noticed about this panel when I saw it, the first thing that jumped out to me is just how violent it is, right? Look at the blood everywhere, just spattered throughout the air, all over the canvas. And There's one thing Morikawa is really good at, better than a lot of other manga artists, even historically, is the use of negative space. Like just the white background, the abstraction of the ring. We don't need it here. This looks incredible. And Rosario's at a 90-degree angle, taking possibly one of the most violent single punches we've seen in the entire series. Boom, he hits the ground. The crowd lose their mind. They're screaming for Mashiba. He did it. The Reaper's scythe descends from the heavens. And look, the crowd's going nuts. You got Sawamura and Sendo and Miyata. They're like, holy shit, what just happened? I like this panel a lot. I like this when I saw it. That's Rosario's coach, who this guy has not had an easy career thus far. I'll say that much. He's done a lot of wrangling of his fighter, and now he just saw him take a really brutal punch. Mashiba's coach is losing his mind here. It's the first time all match we've seen the chopping right. And it's the first time all match that we've seen the chopping right. And if you remember, like Ippo says right now, this is a huge throwback to one of Mashiba's most important fights in the whole series against Kimura. I'll tell a story about that in just a quick second, because something really nice happened to Dovetail personally, but that's one of Mashiba's really formative fights, right? Like he's had a few fights that are not as important, but one of his core fights was against Kimura. It's come up a lot in the story after. It's a big part of Mashiba's internal motivation. And Ippo says he only threw right body blows up until now. That chopping right wasn't even in the champion's realm of possibility. It's the completely outclassed as a strategy. What he did was he spent 8 rounds throwing those body blows at Mashiba and went for the dragonfish after, and it was one of the closest fights Mashiba ever had. So this represents, and look at, I love this panel, Kimura tearing up here, right? I'm gonna harp on this for a moment, because this whole thematic kind of dovetail is really important to what Morikawa is going for here. Let me turn the music down a little more. Mashiba as a character is at the end of his arc. He started this arc as, you know, all the way back in chapter, I don't know, fucking 20 or whatever. He started this arc as a really rough around the edges guy, but as we learn more about him to go on, we start to see that, you know, maybe he has his reasons. He's forced into some bad scenarios. At the beginning of this arc, we learn that he has, you know, diagnosed anger problems he had to see a psychiatrist for. He's been in jail. He's been, you know, close to being homeless. He's had a rough life. And he went from this tough, demonic guy to a really stand-up guy. One theme I like a lot, and if you look at it throughout the manga, Mashiba gradually starts to stand taller and taller as his fights go on, culminating in this fight where, even before the fight, Ippo remarks on the fact that Mashiba is standing almost perfectly up, whereas he used to hunch over a little bit more. And it's representative of him kind of straightening himself out, right? I love how Morikawa does that. He does a lot of visual metaphors in Ippo, and it's one of the reasons I love the series so much. So what's going on here is Mashiba took a really good idea from Kimura, but old Mashiba would never have even thought to take that idea. He wouldn't have even acknowledged Kimura as good enough to steal the idea from me, just get pissy about it. But here, he's on the world stage. He doesn't have time for things like that anymore. Oh, God, this is just such good writing. And as he says, this was all support for this moment, right? This is just perfect. 1475 chapters. That's all, this all built up to that. And Rosario's looking fucking crushed on the ground here, right? There's blood coming out of his mouth and everything, his nose. I like this part of the page too. Look at Ippo, amazing. And then, as I understand that, this is Ippo screaming, amazing, 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 amazing. He's amazing, Kumi-san. And Kumi is tearing up. She's the one who's seen her brother through thick and thin, right? there's a lot of moments in Mashiba's backstory where he's like, oh, don't tell Kumi this, don't let her know this, and stuff like that. But you have to imagine she kind of figured a lot of it out. Things like his trouble with the law and whatnot. And she's seeing this brother who had all of those problems, but kind of lived his whole life for her. She's seeing him actualize himself, become this best version of himself. And she's moved to tears. And I think that these 3 panels are really important for what's ultimately going to happen with Kumi and Ippo. Of course, we know that... Let me turn the music down just a little bit more, too. Whoops. Of course, we know that ultimately there's going to have to be some kind of reckoning, right, between Kumi and Ippo. Kumi's going to have to acquiesce to Ippo's return to boxing. And one of the reasons she might do that is because she starts to understand what it really means to these people. From her perspective as a nurse and as a brother and as someone who's in love with a boxer, all she sees are the risks. These people are crippling themselves. They go on these heinous diets that are not in any way healthy. Then they bleed all over and they break limbs and they lose eyesight and all that. So something's got to make her realize why they do all that in the first place. And I think these 3 panels are a big step in that story, because she's seeing it with her own eyes right now for the first time. She's seeing why Mashiba boxes. And as he says, that was everything. I put out everything I had. I know it's pretty late to say it, but the world is fucking tough. And then it doesn't end. So I'll talk about this writing technique in a moment, but Mashiba hears Rosario kind of rolling around on the ground there, and he slumps into the corner. He's like half dead. Again, take a look at his eyes, like how focused he's being drawn. And, you know, we hear 4. I think that's the Japanese, it's the death number or whatever, right? So he says still. He's losing, he's breathing real hard. Rosario is almost out of consciousness. 4, I was unconscious for 4 seconds. You can't let it end. Stand up, stand up, stand up. Rosario. And he gets up at 6. He's still going. Just stay asleep. Put your hands up. Everything hurts and my stamina is completely tapped. But as long as I can still move, it doesn't matter how you were born or how you were raised tonight. All that matters is which one of us is strongest. Now, this is and Mashiba's character arc, and you'll get most of this time because it's the first video I'm doing on this. I'll probably have to lighten up on this in the future, but Mashiba's character arc is kind of cleaved in 2. In the first half, he fights people that directly oppose kind of who he is, right? He fights Miyata, who is by the books, very relatively kind and noble and whatnot. He fights Ippo, who is all of that times 10, and he loses to Ippo. He morally loses to Miyata. He fights Kimura, who again he underestimates and kind of shows him the value of perseverance and diligence and whatnot. And then the second half of his career is largely marked by fighting characters that are kind of like foils to him, that are kind of like him but a little different. Of course, that's versus Sawamura, is probably the most notable example of that up until this fight. He fights that one OPBF guy who does a lot of headbutts and fouls and stuff. He fights Iga, who incorporates fouls into his fighting repertoire. And then now he fights Rosario, who is, violent fouls like Mashiba times 10 or whatever, old Mashiba times 10. But what's funny is Rosario is going through the same transformation that Mashiba went through in the Ippo fight, where Mashiba starts saying all of this like respect for boxing stuff, right? It doesn't matter. It's a fair world. He says on this next page too. I want to spend more time together in this fair world. This is the same thing Mashiba did against Ippo. So they're really, Morikawa's really going in on this theme of Mashiba has gone from this never say die violent, like cling to victory at all cost type, to a noble, upstanding, proud boxer. And he's awakening that spirit in Rosario almost the same way it was awakened in him from Ippo. It's just really good writing. I am lately, especially in this arc, but in the retirement saga as a whole, I am really happy with Morikawa's writing decisions. I think he has made some very bold decisions at various points. The retirement itself is kind of insane from a writing perspective. But I think he's landing a lot of them. And now as we kind of get into Mashiba going for the world title, Sendo versus Ricardo coming up and all that nice stuff, it's kind of clear that we're getting into the final legs of this story. I can't see Mashiba having another super important story fight after this one. The only one I think might happen is Miyata and him fight after Miyata eventually moves up in weight classes, but that's a long ways away from now anyway. But these chapters are just hitting so hard because of the weight behind them and how he's weaved together these themes and callbacks and parallels over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of chapters. The art's really good. The choreography is great. This is just a really, really strong chapter. And what I was mentioning before was I am actually watching the series over for the first time with a friend of mine. We started back in August. And just today, we got to the Kimura versus Mashiba fight. And it was just great to watch after having read this chapter. So let's leave it for there. I think very, very solid chapter. I will probably try to do this weekly just for my own sake. And would be really fun to eventually get every single chapter kind of in a sort of analysis, but we'll see where we land. Thanks. Peace.